All right, we're going to get started. Before we officially get to the real reason we're here, I want to say two quick things. First of which, I want to thank the University Police Department, without which this campus would not be safe enough for us to be here having this press conference. The second of which, one of our members received a death threat at the beginning of this week. We will not take this threat lightly. We have reported it to the proper authorities, and we will make sure that justice is served. This will not discourage us from being on our campus. My name is Michael Curry, and I'm the president of the Chico State Republicans. Over the last 3 years, the Chico State Republicans have been spat on, assaulted, harassed, battered, followed to our cars at night, sexually harassed, sexually assaulted, had our property stolen, and more. Although these actions are difficult to deal with, we have never let it discourage our campus activism. However, in too many of these instances, Dr. Lindsay Briggs has been involved. As an individual and private citizen, Dr. Briggs has every right to speak her mind publicly. I, as well as every member of the Chico State Republicans, support everyone's First Amendment right to freedom of speech. The First Amendment guarantees your right to free speech, but it does not take away consequences to your words or actions. All citizens must be held accountable for the words and messages they promote. This includes imminent calls for violent action, terrorism, harassment, and general inappropriate behavior that significantly affects how well you can perform at your job. This is why we, the Chico State Republicans, are calling for the immediate termination of employment for Dr. Lindsay Briggs, as well as calling on District Attorney Mike Ramsey to investigate her for violation of state and federal anti-harassment and cyber-stalking laws, as well as calling on the Federal Bureau of Investigation to open an investigation for her affiliations with terrorism and terrorist organizations. Our first allegation surrounding Lindsay Briggs is that she illegally discriminates against students based on their race and gender. California State University, Chico, falls under any jurisdiction placed on public universities by the federal government. The 1964 Civil Rights Act guarantees the right to freedom of racial discrimination in public schools and states, to authorize the Attorney General to institute suits to protect constitutional rights in public facilities and public education. Title IX of the 1972 Educational Amendments Act states that no person in the U.S. shall on the basis of sex be excluded from participation in or denied the benefits of or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. On numerous occasions, Dr. Briggs has made both racist and sexist statements that show her character to be incapable of upholding the university's commitment to following the guidelines set in the 1964 Civil Rights Act, along with Title IX. One of the most egregious statements made by Professor Briggs occurred on July 26th of this year, where she promoted a narrative that white men are the mass shooter type. She stated this to a student of the university. This statement proves an inherent bias that can be reasonably assumed to mean that she discriminates against certain racial groups and genders. Continuing the employment of such an individual would risk university compliance with federal legislation. Moreover, the actions taken and statements made by Dr. Briggs violate the guidelines set out in the CSU's policy and procedures on discrimination, harassment, retaliation, sexual misconduct, dating and domestic violence, and stalking against employees and third parties, where it states that the CSU prohibits discrimination, including harassment, because of any protective status, i.e. age, disability, physical or mental, gender or sex, gender identity, including transgender, gender expression, genetic information, marital status, medical condition, nationality, race or ethnicity, including color or ancestry, religion or religious creed, sexual orientation, sex stereotype, or veteran or military status. On June 28, 2020, Dr. Briggs shared and promoted a largely unproven narrative that 3 white Chico State students were involved in a racially motivated attack on 2 other students that belonged to both the African American and LGBT community. This narrative was posted on social media after a fight broke out at a college party. There was no first-hand report showing a bigoted motivation behind the brawl. Still, Dr. Briggs took the incident and ran with the narrative smearing the 3 white Chico State students as guilty of a hate crime. Through this, Dr. Briggs shared the images of students to her followers on social media, telling them that the students are white supremacists. The bias of Dr. Briggs led her to take action and smear students as white supremacists without any solid evidence. Not only did she discriminate against these students, but she also put their lives in danger by publishing their photos directly on the internet. The next allegation we make against Dr. Lindsay Briggs is that she supports, promotes, advocates for, and participates in terrorism or terrorist organizations. Terrorism is defined in the Code of Federal Regulations as the unlawful use of force and violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objectives. Through multiple statements, Dr. Briggs has promoted acts of terrorism and terrorist organizations such as the radical group ANTIFA. As Dr. Briggs is involved in political activism, which is mostly protected by the First Amendment, we do not mean to question her participation in peaceful protests. Doing so would be both hypocritical and morally wrong, since we believe in freedom of speech. We mean to point to her advocacy of lawless action and promotion of violent behavior. Her calls for rioting on May 29th, stating that protests and riots work. Sharing and promoting statements on July 21st, stating that rioting and property damage are legitimate forms of protest. This, of course, is troubling to see come from an individual that this university has placed in a position to influence the minds of its students. Calls to lawless action are one of the few exceptions to the First Amendment. Dr. Briggs has exhibited a pattern of behavior that includes calling to kill Republicans. Social media activity promoting the idea to skin President Donald Trump alive is just one of these examples. This is deeply upsetting to see, and even more upsetting to see ignored by the university at this time. This behavior shows a lack of civility and affects her ability to fulfill the duties and responsibilities described in her job description. Dr. Briggs proudly proclaims on social media that she is a member of ANTIFA and supports the group's involvement in lawless activity. At a point in time, her profile picture on social media was an image of herself with the words, "This is what an anti-fascist looks like." As of the start of this press conference, she still identifies herself as an anti-fascist in her bio on multiple different social media accounts. These actions and support for, along with involvement in violent extremist terrorist groups such as ANTIFA, would be grounds for dismissal of any individual in any profession, regardless of the First Amendment. Our third allegation is regarding the unprofessional behavior directed towards students of opposing viewpoints, and it will be we will address it with a personal account of an instance where Lindsay Briggs targeted a student at this university.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Turpening. I'm a 20-year-old student at Chico State, and Dr. Lindsay Briggs has shown she has no regard for my safety or my welfare. I am guilty of being a visible member and leader of the Chico State Republicans. As vice president, I have spent countless hours tabling and recruiting on campus. I am typically the only female member that is willing to table alone due to our fear for our safety. As a result, I am one of the most visible members of the club. Last year and over the summer, I experienced targeted sexual harassment, assaults, and threats of physical violence. Throughout all of it, Dr. Lindsay Briggs advised the students conducting these horrific acts on how to get away with this behavior and suffer no consequences. Dr. Briggs has shown a consistent hatred towards myself because I'm a female figurehead with opinions that she disagrees with. This all culminated this past summer when I received notice of a significant threat made on social media against myself by another student that still attends the university. The student in question cannot be mentioned specifically due to a university no-contact policy that serves as my only line of security. This student threatened to throw hands with this white girl in the Republican club, like, I really want to mollywop her shit. After this threat was turned over to the student, to the Office of Student Conduct, the student announced she was under investigation by the university. To which Dr. Briggs responded, I want to do a lot of things to assholes at Chico State. She even tried to give the student a cheap technicality to try to get away with the threat. Dr. Briggs offered, you don't even mention Chico State in your tweet. It could be any Republican club. It's unlikely that Dr. Briggs knows anything about my background, just that we have opposing political views. Nevertheless, she supports violent threats against myself. Lindsay Briggs does not belong anywhere near a university where she can inspire entire classrooms to become violent. Our fourth allegation is the doxing and release of private information of a university police officer. I am now going to read a letter written by the 8th grade student that tried to show her support for the university police department. This letter was sent to President Hutchinson, and the young lady is still waiting for a response to her concerns regarding campus safety and security. Dear Dr. Gail Hutchinson, thank you for getting back to me. I really appreciate that. I'm keeping our emails private because my mom is worried that it's becoming dangerous. I still have some questions for you. I don't feel like you addressed my concern about the police department being bullied by some of your faculty. I am even more concerned now because some of your faculty are publicly threatening Sergeant Dave Bird on Facebook and accusing him of creating a fake profile. Professor Lindsay Briggs, Sparkle Unicorn, seems very angry and hostile, like she wants something bad to happen to Sergeant Dave. She put his name and personal address on her public page, and Randall Stone reposted it. I'm worried that he can be in danger. She refers to herself as a professional troublemaker, and she's saying that Sergeant Dave Bird is to blame for telling me about Paul's comments. Paul's white supremacy comments have been made publicly and were brought to our attention by people outside of the police department. I was deeply offended by Paul's comments and wanted an apology, but I never wanted to jeopardize Paul's safety like they seem to want to do to Sergeant Dave now. If something bad happens to Sergeant Dave, I will feel like my speaking out caused that. Lindsay claims that the police department has been racist and that students of color have not felt safe. But where's the evidence of these claims? It seems like some of your faculty really wants to get rid of the police department altogether and will say and do whatever it takes to make that happen. I don't want anyone at the university to feel bullied, whether they are a professor, police, student, or janitor. Everyone that works for the university should feel safe, regardless of their differences of opinions. Thank you.
No one can reasonably deny that the climate in this country surrounding law enforcement has taken a negative turn. In the last 2 weeks, 2 sheriff's deputies were shot at and targeted due to their affiliation with law enforcement down in Southern California. On September 6th, Dr. Lindsay Briggs shared the private home address of a university police officer, placing the lives of that officer and his family in jeopardy. In doing so, she violated multiple state and federal anti-harassment and cyberstalking laws. Apart from this, an 8th grader is able to see the severity of these actions, yet Chico State has not addressed this situation to any official capacity. Dr. Briggs is under the impression that her job is secure no matter what vile and disgusting action she participates in. She routinely touts her tenure as a shield she can hide behind. The university has failed its students, its faculty, and its community by allowing this individual to teach long enough to obtain tenure. We do not want to hear the excuse from the university that they cannot do anything because of their mistake of tenuring this professor. This is a professor that never should have been allowed in the classroom in the first place. Dr. Lindsay Briggs actively promotes physical harm on both police officers and students in the campus community. She is a threat to our safety and security, both at home and on our campus. She must be removed from campus immediately. President Hutchinson, we plead to you to take action and terminate the employment of Dr. Lindsay Briggs immediately. We ask Butte County District Attorney Mike Ramsey to take immediate action and open investigations for violations of state and federal anti-harassment and cyberstalking laws. And finally, we call on the Federal Bureau of Investigation to open an investigation on Dr. Lindsay Briggs for her affiliation with terrorism. Thank you for your time today. Are there any questions?
Actually, yeah. What confirmed information do you have regarding the text messages sent to one of your club members?
Regarding that, we're still leaving everything with the police department down in Brentwood for them to handle. Student is not currently in the city of Chico. We have no reason to believe it came from a university student or official. It's just addressing an issue that came up in the last week. If there are no further questions, or if there are questions that need to be asked at a later date, you can contact us at chicostategop@gmail.com. Apart from that, thank you so much for showing up today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.